and buying time, killing people next in line, lower class and social slime, they don't matter, genocide, sick from water, sick from air, making money, they don't care, Caesar shit, force of air, fuck them back, it's only for they bomb, they shoot, they kill, they massacre, rape, they burn the kids, no one makes countries laugh to your face, fight and die, cause God forgives. Selling lies and buying time, killing people next in line, lower class and social slide, they don't matter, genocide, sick from water, sick from air, making money, they don't care, see their shit, force a bear, fuck them back, that's only fair, they bomb, they shoot, they kill, they massacre, rape, they burn the kids, no one leaves countries, lie to your face, fight and die, cause God forgives, yeah. Coming back around again.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Ron Stevens, and this is Rock the Boat here on UCY.TV. I'm your host for the next hour, and it is the 4th of August, 2016. And I just want to pass this along first before I get started here. More and more people have come to the realization that global warming is a complete and total manufactured fraud in order to move us to somewhere we don't want to go to and basically lock us down and take away all our rights because, well, we got to save the planet, don't we? But, I check these numbers once in a while, but this is a pretty good set of numbers. Every year seems to be put out by the UN and the IPCC and our different government agencies and whatnot, that last year was the hottest year, but this year will be the hotter still, and hopefully, I think the propaganda is starting to wane. Nobody believes these clowns anymore, and you shouldn't, but it was warm out today here anyways, and it was warm, and so I got my sweetheart to look up there before the show what the hottest temperature was for this day, and that was 33 degrees back in 1887, which is a while ago. And the low temperature for this day was 5 degrees. And that was in 1886. That's 1 year's difference. Okay, so in 1887, the high was 33, which probably meant the low temperature was hovering around 20, 21. And that was 87, and so the low was in 86, which was a low temperature of 5, which probably meant the high temperature for that day was probably buzzing around 12 to 15. That's the kind of spread over the course of 1 year for the same day. And these clowns, and I call them clowns because they are clowns. They ain't scientists. They're just a bunch of clowns working for a nefarious program. And they're telling us that they can work it out so they can tell us that the temperature, the mean temperature, in 100 years is going to be 4 degrees if we don't stop this because we can't let it go over 2 degrees. But here, in the course of 1 year, we just have a phenomenal difference in temperatures. But they ignore that crap. It doesn't make good propaganda. Anyways, I want to give a thumbs up. I find this a very inspiring story. And it's a story of Mary Berger, which most people have probably never heard of. I know I hadn't. I ran into this last night. And I find this, I want to, Mary, shout out to you. Good job. Well done. Great inspirational move. And she is from the Pauls Valley, Oklahoma. And she's a cowgirl who is currently sitting atop the world's standings in barrel racing with more than 175,000 earned so far during the 2016 rodeo season. A large portion of that recently came from the Calgary Stampede up here in Canada, where Berger was a fan sensation all rodeo long, picking up 100,000 check with a win. Now, what I find inspiring about the story is Mary's age. Now, I used to live in Calgary, and I knew some barrel racers, and we used to rent horses on the weekend, go up in the foothills and stuff. And barrel racing's a pretty intense sport. I mean, it's hell-bent for leather, and they hit them barrels, man. I mean, it's a wonder most of these people can even stay on the damn horse. But Mary's sitting atop the standings, and the beauty part of it is that Mary is 67 years old. And I just find this inspiring because, even friends my own age now they sound old, right? They beat up, sound old. They've been working to get their pensions, And here I have a 67-year-old woman who won the Calgary Stampede, and that's no small feat. But anyways, I'm going to do this really quick because Mary hasn't been a barrel racer like since she was 14 or something. Though she joined the Women's Pro Rodeo Association in '85, she didn't actually start focusing on barrel racing until the early 2000s. Now, in most cases, she's probably already past her prime to get into this barrel racing thing. She said she rodeoed quite a bit in 2004, 2005, but just close to home. 2006 was when we expanded out, and we did very well that year. So she would have been 57 at the time when they decided they're going to go for this. Now that's quite an interesting decision for a 57-year-old woman. Not only did Berger make her first Wrangler National Finals rodeo appearance in 2006, she also came away with the first and only world title that year. An injury to her horse, Rare Fred, kept her from defending that title in 2007, but she followed with back-to-back NFR appearance in 2008 and 2009, placing 7th and 4th respectively. It prompts the question, why wait so long to rodeo full-time? Well, in the 31-year gap between joining the World Pro Rodeo Association and her first appearance, trained fraternity horses. Fraternity horses. I don't know what that is, for a number of years. Anyways, that was her focus, and then she decided to get in the rodeo. And at the age of 67, she's sitting on top of the rankings. So don't ever say you can't do something. I spent 2 freaking years trying to get people to step up to the plate, and these are all people whining and bitching about one thing or another, about their government and that. And I heard every excuse in the world why they couldn't step up to the plate and run. Well, here's Mary Berger, 67 years old, barrel racing, and she's sitting at the top of the standing. So, thumbs up to Mary Berger, and enough of the excuses from the rest of the people. Enough of it. Sick and tired of all excuses. Anyways, now, I can almost call this guy an old friend of mine in a way. Canadian publisher Mel Hurdig. This is the headline in the National Post. Publisher Mel Hurdig, an intense nationalist and occasional politician, dead at 84. Now, a few years ago, I had a number of conversations with Mel, and he was a hero of mine back in the 90s. Mel started the National Party and was against all this free trade crap and these deals that were going down. And he was by far the best spoken person in that election, and the most articulate, extremely knowledgeable. And all he got through that was from the media, of course, and the other political parties, was that Mel is dangerous because Mel is a nationalist. And as soon as you say the word nationalist, well, up pops Hitler, right? And which is kind of funny because Mel's a Jew, you know? So, yeah, lots of times, I used to, I was watching that political campaign fairly closely that year. And you know, and he was a nationalist, so he said, and he wanted to fight for our freedom as a nation. He didn't like what was going on, and nor did I, nor do I to this day. And I do consider myself a nationalist. But as soon as you say nationalist, then, well, you're trouble. You're like Hitler. Hitler was a nationalist, you know. Look what happened there. People are so stupid. But anyway, Mel has passed away, and it's unfortunate. I kind of liked the guy, but and I mean I was extremely impressed with the man in the election as the head of the National Party. Now, that was the election of 93, and that was 1 year after we signed on. We didn't, but Prime Minister Mulroney signed us on to Agenda 21, and it's funny, you know, because people say, well, it's communism. Yeah, well, Mulroney was a conservative / if you're in the States, Republican. And the same year, the President of the United States, George Bush, Daddy Bush, signed America on to UN Agenda 21, also a conservative / Republican. And I don't understand why people can't get it through their thick skulls that this is a game being played by both parties. So I was quite impressed with Mel. They ran 170 candidates, didn't win any seats because they came out of nowhere. And people, you know, well, he's a nationalist, right? I mean, you're living in a nation. Ought not you be a nationalist? I mean, if you're not a nationalist, what are you? I mean, seriously, if you're not a nationalist, what the hell are you? An internationalist? Well, that makes you Rockefeller. Rockefeller said that he's been accused of being an internationalist. And if that's the charge, he stands guilty of it. And he's proud of it. As your countries are being torn to pieces by the internationalists who want international global power over you and everything in your land. So I was very, very impressed that this gentleman, Mel Hurdig, stood up to the plate and spoke. He was very articulate. He made the other candidates, the other candidates looked like idiots. Best dressed, best spoken, but always the nationalist. He could have called it something else, I suppose. But because he called it the National Party, every time he would start to make monkeys out of the other candidates running for prime minister, basically liberal, Democrat, and conservative Republican, out would come the knives that nationalist. We saw what Hitler did. He was a nationalist, which didn't make any sense because Mel's a Jew. So to equate Mel's nationalism with Hitler's nationalism seemed a little silly. But they never bothered to mention Mel was a Jew. He was a book publisher. But over the years, I watched Mel a bit. I was very pleased when he did the Canadian Encyclopedia, which everybody told him it was nuts because it's going to cost a fortune to do it. And odds on you moving enough of these encyclopedias to get your money back are like next to nothing. But he went ahead and did the Canadian Encyclopedia anyways, and made $3 million off it, and declared himself debt-free for the first time. But then he tried the Junior Encyclopedia, and that didn't go over so good, so he lost a bunch of money. But I'm just going to go over what they got here in the story a little bit. You know, Hurtig was born June 4th, 1932 in Edmonton to Jewish parents. His father was a Romanian, his mother a Russian. He worked in his father's first store. I like this little story. I didn't know this one before. He worked in his father's first store in Edmonton after he graduated from high school. But when a 300-pound woman complained that the muskrat coat she was trying on made her look heavy, Hurtig decided it was time to get out of the business. It was one of the most boring things I've ever done in my life, Hurtig said. You spend half your waking time at work, so you might as well enjoy what you're doing. So he started a bookstore with $500 and eventually became head of what he described as the largest Canadian publishing house outside of Toronto. He also dabbled in federal politics as leader of the National Party of Canada, formed in 1992 to battle foreign ownership of Canadian business and industry. And he goes on and says, it seemed to me that we were lucky to live in this country, he once said. And the more I traveled abroad, the more that was reinforced. An articulate, fine-featured man with a shock of white hair, the dapper Hurtig seemed a natural for politics, but never did hold an elected office. He ran in 1972 as a Liberal without success. He broke with the party the next year over foreign ownership and formed the Committee for an Independent Canada. His publishing empire, on the other hand, was quite successful. One of his first titles was A Coup, Eli Mandel's An Idiot Joy, which won him the Governor General's Award for Poetry. With the publication of the renowned encyclopedia in 1985, he earned his money and then got out of debt and went back into debt. And he eventually sold his publishing firm to Toronto McClellan and Stewart and turned to writing. He slammed the Canada-U.S. Free Trade Agreement and other moves he described as sellouts in the betrayal of Canada. Then came Pay the Rent, another book, Pay the Rent or Feed the Kids. And a lot of people can relate to that right now. What the hell am I going to do? Am I going to pay the rent, pay the hydro bill, pay the water bill, or am I going to feed the kids? People are getting jammed against the wall. It was a book on poverty in Canada. In a country this rich, no one should be living in poverty in this country. There's absolutely no excuse for it, ever and today. There is no excuse for people in this country to be having to go to a food bank or to go to a Salvation Army or something like that. There is no excuse for this kind of garbage. He also wrote a memoir, At Twilight in the Country, published in 1986. One book I don't see him in here is another book he wrote, The Death of Canada. I don't see that book listed here, but we'll find that out in a bit. Another call to sovereignty, The Vanishing Country, Is It Too Late to Save Canada, was released in November 2002. And last year, he self-published a small book called The Arrogant Autocrat, Stephen Harper's Takeover of Canada. Hurtig said his information often came in the form of provincial or federal envelopes stamped confidential. They were from anonymous civil servants sympathetic to my ideas who have photocopied documents, he once told a reporter. It was Hurtig who claimed the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency compiled embarrassing reports on former British Columbia Premier Dave Barrett. In The Vanished Country, he also suggested the CIA was promoting the Americanization of Canada. Hurtig caused a furor in 1975 when he alleged a former member of an American Strategic Service Office was an advisor to then Alberta Premier Peter Lougheed and was helping to plan the giveaway of the province's oil sands. Away from work, he loved golf. He was a 6 handicap and called that a major vice until he started playing racquetball in later life. And he was married twice, once in 1976 and then again in 1981. Now, what really bugs me about Mel is when I got doing research in that, I knew of Mel from the election, and I was rather taken with the man and his ideas, or at least his spoken ideas. Now, Mel Hurtig also started up, I think is there a thing in here? Let me see where this is. Yeah, I'll go back up at the top of the story. This is a published report. It says Mel Hurtig, the ardent nationalist behind the Canadian Encyclopedia, has died. His death was confirmed by his wife, his oldest daughter, Barbara, who said he was surrounded by his family at the end. Hurtig was perhaps best known as a publisher. Where is it I'm looking for? Oh, here we go. We mourn our friend and mentor, Mel Barlow, national chairwoman of the Council. It doesn't even say the Council. This is the Council of Canadians is what she's the head of. And this is where it got tricky. Now, Mel Hurtig did start the Council of Canadians, supposedly to defend this country. And then he gave it up to Maud Barlow. Now, I'm just going to stuff this in here for a second, and I'm going to buzz over to Wikipedia probably, just because there's a lot of links and stuff in here. And okay, died August the 3rd, 2016, at 84 years old. Now, I didn't even know Mel was sick. Mel has a Facebook, and he's tangled up with these arts people. And anyways, we just, the politics here. Okay, this doesn't have a whole hell of a lot in here. Let's see what we got. Selected works, references. The Council of Canadians website. Doesn't really say too much about Mel here. Which is kind of strange. Let's see. See, either Mel knew exactly what he was up to, or he didn't. This is the hard part to nail down. So I have to go to Council of Canadians website. Okay, so we have the Council of Canadians, which Mel started, and it's got a picture up here. Mel Hurdig loved this country more than anyone I ever met. He founded the Council of Canadians along with many dedicated Canadians to fight for a better Canada and a better world. We mourn his passing, Maud Barlow. Now this is the reason, Maud Barlow is the reason that I call Mel Hurdig in Vancouver, where he was living. And I'll never forget the first conversation I ever had with Mel. It was pretty interesting. Because when I called up Mel, he'd written a book not that long before I called him, called The Death of Canada. And so I called him about the Council of Canadians. And where did I lose that at now? Where in the hell did I get to? Oh, here we are. So Maud Barlow took over the Council of Canadians. Maud Barlow was hooked up with Maurice Strong on the Blue Water deal, and basically saving the water. But the whole thing, if you knew who Maurice Strong was, and he's for capitalism for his friends and socialism for everyone else. In other words, they're going to control all the water, and they'll decide how much water you actually get. And this is the same guys that hooked up with Nestle, and the guy from Nestle, as everybody pretty much knows about this, saying, that water is not a human right. So you got Maud Barlow now working against the country, pretending that she's against the encroachment from the United States and foreign countries, but then she's doing the exact opposite of what she portrays herself as. So I phoned Mel because I knew he'd started the Council of Canadians, and when the first time I ever talked to Mel, I think that was probably 5 years ago or so. And I phoned up Mel, and we were having a decent conversation, and I told him who I was, and I said, I have to ask you some questions. I'm going to say something that's probably going to tick you right off. And I asked him to get as angry as he wished, but not to hang up. And I'd asked him about Maud Barlow, and he said, oh, fine woman. And I said, David said, oh, fine man. David Suzuki's a fine man. Now I'm thinking, wait a minute. You're a nationalist who is trying to save this country, and you're saying that Maud Barlow is a great woman and David Suzuki is a great man doing great work, which flies completely in the face of anything that could closely be connected with saving this country. And so what I explained to him was that Maud Barlow, after doing some research on her, it would appear that Maud Barlow, who has taken over the Council of Canadians from you, is a Trojan horse. Well, at that point, Mel went right off the deep end as expected. And he started, who the hell is this? How dare you? And he went off the deep end, and he was screaming and ranting and carrying on. In the meantime, I'm going, yeah, Mel, just don't hang up, right? So he'd go on his rant, and I'd go, no, don't hang up. Whatever you do, don't hang up. I need to talk to you. So he eventually cooled down. He goes, who the hell is this anyways? So we got talking. And, I said, I can show you why I'm saying what I'm saying. So, I would pass him some information, and then we would have a chat on the phone. And then we got to be actually kind of chummy on the phone. And he was impressed with my research in that. He was impressed with my questions and where it led me to and stuff. So he wasn't mad at me anymore. So we got very cordial. And at one point he asked me, he said, I have to go to Toronto. How far away from you, Toronto are you? I said, I don't know, 2.5 hours maybe. He said, well, I would really, really, really like to have lunch with you or something. I would like to talk to you and discuss my new book on that. And so I thought, well, that would be pretty cool, because he was my hero a long time ago. He is a nationalist, or said he was a nationalist. And I'm a nationalist. I'm of the absolute firm belief, right? Like we've been told over and over and over again that we can't survive without trade and that, and we can't survive unless we give things away. Well, bite me, right? My attitude with Canada, at least, is that, I've said it for years, as long as I can remember, if the rest of the world was water and this was the only piece of land on the whole planet, then there's a simple question needs to be asked. Could the 34 million people that live here survive and thrive if this is who we were, and this is the only people on the planet, and this is the only landmass? Could the people survive and thrive what is offered by this landmass? And the answer is simple. We'd live in Shangri-La, simply because there's nothing we can't engineer, build, grow, manufacture to suit our needs. Nothing. Yeah, we have homeless people. We have hungry people. We have people, like Mel said in his book, pay the rent or feed the kids. There's no excuse for this kind of crap. So we'd had several really positive chats on the phone, and so I passed Mel I emailed him some information, and he said, if you can get me this stuff, I will read it, okay, and I'll see where you're going with this. So did that. And then talking to Mel, and I think he sent me an email on it too, he says, as hard as this is for me to accept about Maud Barlow being a Trojan horse, he said, after looking through what you sent me, I have to say you're absolutely correct. Okay. But then I'm thinking, well, Mel started the Council of Canadians and he gave the reins to Maud Barlow. Does he not know who Maud Barlow is? Why would you give the reins to this woman if in fact she's a Trojan horse? Which got me a little bit curious about Mel. Did Mel throw Maud under the bus in our conversation to protect himself? Is in fact Mel not the nationalist he proposes to be or promotes himself as? So I got rooting around on Maud Barlow, and that's when I came across now I forgot the damn name of the thing, the UNPA, the United Nations Parliamentary Assembly group, pushing for United Nations Parliament, which will supersede our sovereignty. And there's where I found Maud Barlow, which made sense. It's like the World Federalist, basically. And we know the World Federalist is a satanic organization, which is pushing the UN, which is a satanic organization, because Walter Cronkite got the Norman Cousins Award, the World Federalist Award. And when he got that award, Walter Cronkite, the man you can trust in news, hello, I'm Walter Cronkite, yada, yada, yada. I almost fell over when I saw that clip. Here's the man you can trust in news, Walter Cronkite, accepting the Norman Cousins Award, World Federalist, saying that he was glad to sit at the side of Satan. Sweet. So we got Maud Barlow hooked up with Morris Strong. And as I go through the list of names, we find David Suzuki, which is a guy that Mel Hurdig said that both Maud and David Suzuki were fine people. But they're both members of the UNPA. How is that possible? How could they possibly be good people? Pushing for the absolute demise of the nation states, which is what the UN's up to. The founders of the UN, that's what they're up to. Because the founders of the UN are the ones that created World War I and World War II for the sole purpose of creating world government, world religion, and our good friend Israel. And those the people that were the ones that put together the League of Nations and eventually the United Nations, these are the people who started those wars, which killed hundreds of millions of people. Well, you know they can't be people of high moral value, or they wouldn't have done what they did. But they did it. They never showed any remorse about it. And now they're moving for their final stages, or so they think. Of course, we're going to stop them. But as I go through the list, I see numerous prime ministers. I see top people from the Senate, the judiciary, professors. Big long list of people who are working, and these are very prominent people in government, in the media, in the university, pushing for these United Nations Parliamentary Assembly. And lo and behold, whose name do I finally come across in there, but not my one-time so-called hero. I don't like heroes, but a gentleman I looked up to, Mel Hurdig. And that really saddened me. But see, the whole point of the UN and Israel is to create the Jewish state and take control of the world. And Mel's a Jew. And it's sad, because I really like the guy. I mean, I really like the guy. I wish I could have went down to Toronto and had dinner with him or lunch with him. I would have found it just an absolutely fantastic and fascinating conversation we could have had. But I was talking to my buddy who is an extraordinary researcher, and I'd explained that I'd been talking to Mel. And he knew that Mel had written the Canadian Encyclopedia. And there were some questions about the Westminster Statute that were bothering my friend Doug. And he said, ask Mel about it. I mean, he's Mr. Canada. I mean, he wrote the Canadian Encyclopedia. If anybody should know the ins and outs of the Westminster Statute, it ought to be Mel. And I said, good idea. Now, if I hadn't made that call, me and Mel would have likely hooked up for lunch in Toronto. But I was pretty much done with Mel after I made the call about the Westminster Statute. And Mel said he'd never heard of it. Well, that ain't possible. So here we have a man that was put forward as a nationalist, a man who started the Council of Canadians because he cared about Canada, putting UN minions in place to look after and run Council of Canadians, calling David Suzuki a fine, upstanding man when he's the exact opposite. And it really saddens me because, well, I liked Mel. But the truth is the truth, and there's nothing you can do with the truth except deal with it. And that's kind of unfortunate that this is where we're at. You got to be careful who you trust. You got to be careful who. I mean, there is an old saying: "Trust no man." Okay, trust no man. And this seems to be it's a sad day for me because I really like the guy. You know, but such as it is. So here we have the Council of Canadians run by Maude Barlow. And here's some of their take action things. Protect every lake and every river in Canada. That's what it says. Take action on this. In other words, hand every lake and river over to world governance through the UN and the globalists and the multinational corporations. Because as Rockefeller said, something has to take the place of government, and business seems to be the obvious entity to do it. And that's what this is. This is the whole idea of the world government. It is a world government run by the largest corporations and the bankers and their friends. It says here 91% of Canadians want a national pharmacare program. Premier Wynne, do what's right for Grassy Narrows. Newfoundland, tell the MHA to say no to fracking. Tell your Liberal MP why federal pipeline reviews need real change. No nuclear waste near the Great Lakes shores. Send your letter now. Let's have real public consultations on the TPP. Stop regulatory reviews for pipeline projects. Petition reject the TPP. And don't frack Ontario. Now, that's all well and good. That's all good stuff. Most of it anyway. And most people would say, oh, well, geez, they're on our side. No, they're not. Okay? This is a front group. That's all it is. A freaking front group. And they're leading people astray. Now, I talked to a guy who was the head of the Toronto chapter of the Council of Canadians, probably a year after I'd been talking to Mel and that about Maude, and we had a very good chat, and I explained who Maude Barlow actually is. And he thanked me for calling because he said, this is starting to make sense. I was starting to have questions myself about Maude Barlow. And this clears up a lot of stuff for me. So he was quite happy that I called. I actually thought he was going to be ticked off. But he obviously was starting to have his own questions. And the problem is, too many people don't check into anything. That's one of the biggest problems we have. You know, these things are usually set up, and it's just like Idle No More. They got the native people running around pissed off. And that came straight out of the United Nations. Occupy came out of the United Nations. All of these things, Black Lives, I'm sure I can trace that back pretty quick to the United Nations. It'd take a little bit of time to do it. All of these things are set up to either gather you up or to get you irritated. It's all about taking you down from the inside. You have these smiling faces, and they really saying what I want to hear, so you join them. Then you have the other factions who you go, well, what are they doing? They're radicals in that. Okay, so it's just chaos. It's just chaos that they're creating. And what do they expect out of the chaos? Order. Whose order? Their order. And I'm sure, I wonder, just let me see it. I want to see if I can find a reference to this in the Council of Canadians. Sometimes when something like this happens, when Mel passed away here, that it gets me to think back, and it absolutely boggles my mind how much I actually know. It really kind of freaks me out. Been at this a long, long time. And it's very disheartening sometimes when you're trying to get people to get moving. Like how much longer we got to wait for people to step up to the plate? Because time's running short. Let's see here. Oh, that's in the National Post, not the Council of Canadians. It sucks. Do they not have... Okay, here's their campaigns: trade, water, healthcare, energy and climate, and democracy. Chapter events, about us, vision. Let's see here. They don't have a search engine on this thing. Apparently. Oh, here it is, here. Okay, basic income. I don't know if I'm going to bring anything up here or not. Let's see. Okay, let's see what they got to say about I'm sure energy and climate will be all about green energy. Energy and climate justice. There was growing concern about the grim realities of climate change and diminishing energy resources globally. We are supporting communities fighting energy projects that will destroy their land, water, and air. We are working to stop pipelines and will bring fracking, natural gas, and crude sands to new markets, and supporting the efforts of communities to say no to fracking. We are pushing the Canadian government for strong policies that protect our environment and focus on renewable, sustainable energy solutions. Pressing for immediate government action on climate change is also central to our efforts. We work as part of a global climate justice movement calling for system change, not climate change. And they are definitely not working for the people of these lands. But, if you look at it and it says Council of Canadians, well, Canada is a corporation. So they're the council of, one of the councils promoting what the corporation wants. Let's see what it says here on trade. Trade is important to the Canadian economy to the extent that it enriches communities, respects democracy, and preserves our shared natural environment. But free trade agreements signed by Canada and other countries in the past 30 years have had the opposite effect. And that's absolutely true. Council of Canadians believes trade agreements should be made by and for the people, not corporations. We campaign to make trade deals fair and trade policy open and democratic. Obviously doesn't know what democratic means. Let's see here. Okay. Water. The Council of Canadians is a leader in fights to protect Canada's freshwater sources. Our campaign work focuses on recognizing water as part of a shared commons. Water is a human right and as such must be protected from privatization, pollution, and bulk exports. We are campaigning to protect the Great Lakes from pollution, misuse, and government neglect. We are working to stop fracking, a natural gas extraction process. We encourage community empowerment and involvement through our Blue Communities Project. Okay. Now, David Suzuki was involved in what was it called? The Blue Dot campaign. These are all straight out of the United Nations. Both Maud and David Suzuki are part of that program. In Canada, there is no national strategy to address urgent water issues, and federal leadership to conserve and protect our water has been missing. We are campaigning for a national water policy that will safeguard communities' water. Water is vital to people's health and livelihoods. Join us in taking action to protect water. Well, Maud, why don't you, put your money where your mouth is, and go and drill some wells for the many native communities that have been boiling water or having it tanked in for bloody decades. Okay? Go do that. Go do something positive. But the deal is that, and the sad part is, okay, she was hooked up, Maud Barlow was hooked up with Maurice Strong in a UN campaign on water. I forget exactly what it was called right now. It could have been Blue Communities. But here's the irony of these so-called environmentalists. Now, a lot of people refer to Maurice Strong. They referred to him when he was alive as like Mr. Environment kind of thing. Well, I encourage everyone to just go and put in the search bar George Washington Hunt, or George Hunt, who got involved in 1987. George has since passed. Miss him terribly. He was a guy that put his heart out there, and he put everything he had into trying to alert people to the how crooked this environmental movement is. And Maurice Strong, who had the Baca Ranch, his wife still got it, I guess, they found out that underneath of that, there's a humongous aquifer. So what did him and the boys, like Ruckelshaus was involved in it, who was head of the EPA, what was the plan? The plan was to siphon that water off and sell it. But here we have, you can't use water. Maurice Strong and the boys at the UN, they want you to be forced to use 75% less water than you're presently using. People are being arrested for collecting rainwater in barrels or digging a pond on their property. Yet the very people at that are head of the environment, trying to save the environment, trying to save the water, conserve the water. These same jackasses had a plan to siphon off this aquifer, this humongous aquifer. And when George Hunt got wind of that, he went to the ranchers and asked them what would happen if they pulled this much water out of the aquifer. And he said, "We're done." If they pull that kind of water out of that aquifer, our ranch is going to dry up and blow away. Now, did Morris Strong give a damn about the ranchers? Did he give a damn about the aquifer? No, because he believes in capitalism for him and his friends and socialism for everyone else. And that's the game they're playing. Okay, so you have an environmental boot of tyranny. I guess it'll be a green boot on the back of your neck. It's all a fraud. It's always been a fraud. And we have to work to get some of this knowledge to the people around us, wherever it is you live. Any of these people that you think are on the good side of this, you best investigate the hell out of them. You know, I don't get caught too many times, but I mean, in 92, I knew all my life there was something wrong here, but I wasn't engaged in this the way I am now. In 92, when I saw Mel presented as a nationalist, a man that cared about his country, and so on and so forth, I accepted it. And I was guilty because I didn't do as my teacher told me in grade school. Believe nothing you read, see, or hear until you personally take the time to verify it. Failure to do so opens your mind to accepting all manner of propaganda and outright lies as truth. So I got snookered, and I don't like that. You know, here's my hero, the nationalist. It turns out that he's a member, or was a member, of the UNPA, which is basically the World Federalist, which is a satanic group like the UN, pushing for the demise of our nation while waving the flag. That really irritates the hell out of me. So, you know, I bid you a fond adieu, Mel. But you did help me become a nationalist, whether you were playing the other side or not. I am a nationalist. I've always been a nationalist. I will die a nationalist. Because I believe in my people and I believe in my lands and I believe we're being snookered and screwed over and decimated and taken down from the inside. The enemy, my friends, I don't give a damn what country you live in or how much you like your leader. The enemy is inside the gates and has been for a very, very, very long time. And we have to come to terms with that. Because things are not going to get better unless we make them better. If we're depending on our so-called elected officials to do something to our benefit, well, you're living in a dream world. Or as Carlin said, you know, why they call it the American dream. Because you got to be asleep to believe it. True words. We need to wake up. We need to stand up. And we need to take our lands back. Anyways, I want to give that lady in Oklahoma another thumbs up before we hit the music. A 67-year-old woman at the top of the world standings in barrel racing. I mean, that is damned impressive. So don't think you're ever too old. I mean, Mel was working right up till, I didn't even know he was ill. So I take it he was working right up to the very end. As long as you're breathing, you're young enough to do something. Okay, enough of the excuses. Anyway, this is the hour's up. Thank everybody for tuning in.
They don't matter, genocide, sick from water, sick from air, making money, they don't care. Caesar shit, force of air, fuck them back, it's only what they want. They shoot, they kill, they master parade, they burn the kids, no one makes countries lie to your face, fight and die. Just go
Okay, take care. Bye.
This is Ozzy Skateboard, and you're listening to